How to illustrate the point of conciseness and concise writing, which is what I'm here to talk about. How better to do it than to have a slide with no headline, no bullets, no verbiage, and nothing at all in the way of text, because you didn't need it on this slide. So that's going to be the common thread. And my goal with this presentation is that every one of you, even though your heads are really full right now, that you have room for one more thing, that you'll go home with something very practical that you will be able to do in your writing from now on that will make a difference and make it concise and better, and your users will thank you for it. So if you don't walk out of here with that clear goal by the end, let me know. But that's what I'm hoping for. So the number one complaint one of my colleagues has heard is that people don't have the writing skills in the new hires. And so I really believe that this is an important thing to talk about, and whether you consider yourself a strong writer or whether you just happen to be doing writing in your job because your company couldn't hire a writer. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are sort of in that position here. I know Alan and Rachel I was sitting with, they're not really writers, but their company said, "Thou shalt write," and they said, "Oh, okay." How many people are sort of in that position here today? That by training, it's not really your thing, but you're designated to do it. So I feel for you. So I'd like to talk about what concise means. And when I say concise, I'm not talking about necessarily short. And in fact, what does that even mean? I mean, you'll hear keep it simple, keep it short, but it's not a useful mantra. So if someone says, "Cut me a short piece of string," that just has no meaning. So text, like a piece of string, you want to make it be just as long as your readers are going to need it to be. So concise means minimal. And what does that mean? Well, it also does not mean robo-speak. Anybody here remember the old enough to remember? What show is that? Lost in Space. Remember, it does not compute. This is unfortunately very common in computer documentation, where push button, that's one version of concise. That's not what I mean by concise. You don't want to leave those articles out, especially if you are going to be translating, because people get confused, especially if they don't read English as their main language. They'll be like, push button what? So keep your articles. That's not what we're going for here, to chop out the articles. Another thing I'm not talking about is to gut your content for mobile devices. That's, I think, pretty much been debunked. Probably nobody sitting in this room thinks that if you're writing for mobile, you should just put a subset of your content out there. Jacob Nielsen got in a whole lot of trouble a few months back by making that claim. Everybody jumped on him. That's not logical. People aren't using their devices just on the run. They're pretty much using them everywhere, and they're reading everything. And in fact, Eric, I think you were telling me, I wasn't sure whether the kind of writing that most of you would be doing, are people reading your documentation on a smartphone? Are they reading it on an iPad? And Eric, you're saying yes, for your readers are reading it on everything. How many people would concur? Do you have a sense? So you have to be thinking about the device size, even if you're writing on a big screen, as one factor. They're going to be reading everything on their mobile devices. If you're thinking in terms of gutting your content, because the screen, on a big screen, we can have all this wonderful stuff. We have all these tabs. Can you see tabs there? I'm not sure they come through. You have a discussion, sponsors, members, pages. And the meetup little screen version, you can't get any of that content. They decided that all you needed was to see upcoming meetups. And it's disappointing as a user to go to your smartphone and find that the content is missing. So that's another thing that I don't mean by conciseness. There's no discussion board there, there's no calendar, there's no pretty much anything except the next meetup. And by the way, I love meetups, and there are a couple of you here, Ed and Andrew, that I've gotten to know. There are some wonderful meetups in Portland, so I highly encourage all of you to take advantage of those as another way of developing community. So here's what I mean by minimal. It's got to be enough to meet your readers' needs and enough to accomplish your purposes. You don't want anything more, and you don't want anything less. So conciseness is going to require some insight into your readers, and I can't help you too much with that kind of insight. But I can help you some with the language issues. So when I talk about the one thing I want you to go home with, it'll be something you can be looking for in your writing to help tighten it up. So why does it make so much business sense? You're dealing with small screens. Translation costs, I think, maybe not a real common issue, but I know, Eric, you said you're mindful of it, and how many other people are working in some kind of environment requiring translation. So, that's a lot of you, like more than half of you. So, and if you're not, you probably will be at some point, and it gets quite expensive. So if you have any extra words in there, it will cost. And then readability. If you write tight, concise language, your help screens, your documentation is going to be more usable. So you may, I think we already have gotten past the myth that we're all writing for the small screen, whether we think we are or not. People are going to be reading everything on screens this size, and it may be friendly, it may be a big web page squeezed down, but we sort of have lost control of the size of the screen. So have mercy. This is from a completely different realm of the documentation that most of you are writing, but it makes the point. There are a whole bunch of words here. You have a picture of a toothbrush, so you really don't need any more than this. This is it. So, and the word empathy came up in the last presentation, and that's really the key. If your readers can get it in one word, have a heart, don't give them any more. And if you're dealing with translation, you will be very familiar with how much space it takes. So every word you can save in English, you're going to reap the benefits. So let's think about translation for a minute to a business. So you have a 6-word statement here. You may be needing a loan, and one of the things we'll be talking about, and this is getting to the trick that I want you to go home with, is a be verb. You can almost always get rid of any kind of a be verb, and your sentence will be tighter and stronger. And if you're translating, every single word counts. How much does it count? You save a word, you're saving about a quarter per language. And if you multiply that out times one of those fat books that I think we have a picture of that's in the trash now, about the size of a Harry Potter novel is 10,000 sentences. And then multiply by 25 languages, let's say, which a lot of companies are doing and more. You're going to be multiplying that quarter out to lots and lots of quarters. I skipped over the amount there. Let me see. You do the math. So $62,000 to do one book, big fat book in 25 languages. And a lot of companies are doing lots of equivalents of big fat books in many more languages. So the discipline that you start today and maybe are already doing will start saving you big money when you get into translation. So a quarter a word is approximate. If you are doing translation, you might be, kind of out there mentally critiquing me right now. She doesn't know all these variables, and yes. So it depends on the language. It depends on whether the word is in the translation memory already. Lots of factors, but a quarter is a pretty good ballpark. And you're going to pay even if the word has already been translated because the translators have to touch it. And so cutting your words, I think you get the point. It's going to save you money. But even if you're not translating, you're going to have a much better product if you get rid of all the words you don't need. So this is a kind of a checklist of a few of the things you can be looking for, and there are a million checklists like this out there on the internet. But I wanted to leave you with a few practical things. The one at the top, the weak be verbs, we're going to talk a lot about. It's a simple but extremely powerful way to make your writing tighter and punchier and more clear. So that is the tip that I want you to take with you, even if everything else that I've said goes out of your brain by the time you leave here, is those be verbs are your cues to making your writing a lot stronger. Look for ways to get rid of them. And then here are a few other things. The ly words, your adverbs, typically they add no value, so you can usually get rid of them. You can get rid of very and such and so. You can get rid of negatives for the most part and make a positive statement that is going to be more clear and useful. You can look for, and I'm sure if you've ever had an English class even once in your life, most of this will be familiar, but it still is very common to find these phrases in even the best of writing. The fact that, you don't need it. The word just get rid of it. If you write begin to or start to, you can get rid of that phrase and you won't lose a thing. So watch for a point in time. You sort of sound like a politician. At this point in time. It's like, what would it be a point in otherwise? So. The little word of, this is one of my favorite tips, and I came to it just about a year ago, and I've been a professional writer for 25 years. But I have been discovering that the word of tips you off almost always to bloated language. So watch for that little word and think of it as an opportunity. It will open up possibilities for a much better sentence if you get rid of that little word of. The word proverbial, you're bloating whatever you're saying if you use that word. And the word different, I doubt that you're using it that much, but if you're around documentation much, you'll run into a few different, or many different, or 3 different versions. And I don't know how there could be 3 same versions, but that's another word to watch for. Particular is another word you're never going to need. And verbiage, unless you're in marketing, you probably don't even use it at all, but nobody wants to run into that word. So any other words that you can pitch, really this list is not so much the value in itself, but just to get you thinking. Everything that you write could be written tighter. That is just a fact. Words come out of your brain that aren't concise. It's the way all of us write. So you want to give yourself time to go back through, after you've had the thoughts and you've captured them, then go back through and look at the words with a cold eye and look for these kinds of things and anything else. You probably have your own personal words that we all get attached to, and you'll discover, oh, I'm really using that word way too much, and it makes a big difference to give yourself that time to go back through. So this one here, I'll say again, walk out today and be watching around you. You'll see billboards, you'll be reading articles, you'll read a newspaper article, user documentation. If you start looking for be verbs, you'll be surprised and thinking, oh, I could say that in half the words and it would be so much better. And then start doing that with your own work, and it's going to make it just that much more readable and clear. So this is your take home right here. So here's an example. We get a double whammy here. I have no idea what that first sentence really means. Another common request is being able to integrate search functionality. So that may mean something to the person, it obviously means something to the person that wrote it, but any volunteers to put that into more concise language?
You want search.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Another common request is integrating search functionality.
Could you say that again?
Another common request is integrating search functionality.
So that got rid of the being, it narrowed it down, but there's still one is left in there. Another common request is to integrate search functionality. And that's much better, but if you can say it in half the words, you're golden. And if you're looking for those opportunities all the time, you're going to be amazed at how much more readable your documentation is. The killer is that it does take extra time to write concisely. It just doesn't come out of your head concise. So this is more of an editing exercise than a generating exercise. So I can't help you there. It will take time, but it's worth it. If you care about the quality of your reader's experience, and for yourself too, it's been noted today that the documentation serves you 2 years later when you've forgotten everything. If you've written it well, you're going to be happier yourself when you go back to it. So one thing that I do want to say, it's not easy. Seeing the be verbs is really easy, but figuring out how to fix them, it's not self-evident, and there's not a right or wrong way to do it, but it gives you a tip-off that you have an opportunity. And the best thing you can do is think, what will my readers understand? What's going to get straight into their brains? How can I say it? So yours, Eric, what was it again? You want search. There's just no way they're going to trip on that. So the more direct you can imagine what will work for your reader, that's what you're looking for. So here's one more example for the business case using translation and looking at our be verbs. This is the dreaded passive voice. Updates are needed to your content. You can save 2 words by saying your content needs updating. It's the same exact information, just tighter. And if you do our math again, you're talking about $250,000 that you save if you cut out 2 words out of every 6. So it's really worth doing. So here's one more. I'm going to let you read it and ask for a volunteer to say this more concisely. No right or wrong answers. Write concisely. Oh man, you're putting me to shame. I love it. So there's an is. There's a not. That's one of our cues. Huge volumes. The word huge is redundant. A volume is never. Well, I guess we did see an example of a slim volume sort of today, but a huge volume is going to be huge. Of is a tip-off. And just any word you can get rid of, you want to get rid of. So I'm going to have to change this slide now. Write concisely. But at any rate, if you can do a dramatic reduction in your word count, you're talking dramatic differences in your translation costs and obviously in the comprehensibility of your English for everyone. So here we have our example again. All we need is one word out of each of those chunks. And I'm sure you didn't miss the words that I left out. As I put myself in your shoes, I had a headline there, and I'm thinking, they have the pictures, they don't need the words. So if we were doing a workshop, I would have you all break up and pull out some of your own work, because that's where you get the most value, is when you really look at your own stuff and say, I wrote that, and you put the squeeze on them. But I guarantee you, you're going to be delighted if you take the time and give yourself the discipline of looking for these opportunities. You're going to come out with much, much better writing, and it feels good to be good at your job. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story. This is a water cooler at a place that I've done some work. And it looks like a really nice, elegant, simple design, 3 buttons, nice bright colors. How hard could it be to get water out of a water cooler? So we've got up on the top, you can't see it here, but I'm going to show you this quick reference label that, that gives you handy instructions for how to get various kinds of cups of water out of this machine. So I'm thinking, okay, well, it looks, quick reference cards are good, right? So without needing to read the words, let's just take a look at someone trying to use this thing. Now, I know it's not a piece of software, but the concept of documenting something in a way that's easy to understand pretty much applies to any kind of product.
You ready to do this, Matt?
I think so.
Check.
Troy is going to help me so you all can hear.
Yeah, we're not really fully set up for this, so we're going to do something really low tech.
Actually, it's a demonstration of the importance of collaboration, is what it comes down to. So this is a 3-minute video of my friend Rick, a very smart man, programmer, as a matter of fact, attempting to get a drink
So
of
technical
of water.
writers and programmers can be friends?
I think there's a song. Technical writers and programmers can be friends. And the dance, all right? Yeah. Are we getting on video here? It's like soon coming to YouTube. All right, let's try it. Now, let's see. Oops.
Should you choose to accept it, and I hope that you will, out of the
Can you
kindness
hear?
of your heart,
Is it on?
get your head in the picture. Here is to fill that glass with some room temperature water for me. No. With our handy dandy water cooler. Check it out. Check that out.
Where's the bottle?
All right. So just pretend that you've never done this before, which in fact you haven't. Is that right?
Well, it looks like water.
Okay. So we're looking for room temperature water. So what are you thinking? What are you seeing here? What's striking you?
It's room temperature. Oh, is that one?
What do you think of this thing?
It works.
And you're looking at right now?
Until the green light flashes, release the green button and press and hold the blue button. What? Oh, I didn't press and hold the blue button. Release, I don't know what water you might
All right, let's try this again.
Okay, press and hold green button until the green light flashes. Flash, flash. And then release the green button and press and hold. And press and hold the blue button. Oh, that's fine. Oh, stop flashing.
Thing of beauty.
That's a noise. Oh, wait. Mine. Voila.
So what do you think? Could you get hot water out of that thing?
That's easy, because that looks like it's hot because it's red.
So what would you do? How would you get hot water out of there?
Press and hold it. It doesn't flash.
All right, let's try some hot.
Well, you know what? I bet there's a safety feature built in because it's hot, so you have to do 2 hands.
Is it coming out hot?
I have no idea. No.
All right, let's try it one more time.
That's hot water. Press and hold the red button until the red light flashes. Otherwise it's impossible. Hey, that took a long time. Release the red button and press and hold the blue button. Well, it's the same as the green button, but why didn't you? Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that we really want hot water first.
Is it hot?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, say into the camera with me. That was easy.
That was easy.
Thank you, Rick. Signing off.
Ow!
Thank you, Troy. I think you have a future.
All right.
So, the point, I guess, is pretty clear. You can't always fix product problems with even the best of documentation. So, if you're having trouble saying it clearly and concisely, maybe you need to go back to the product, the code, the whatever it is, and maybe fix it there. So here, this would be a much more elegant way to solve that particular problem. Just redesign the product. So in closing, I will borrow from Andrei Codrescu, the real technology behind all our technologies is language. It actually creates the world our consciousness lives in. I don't know to what extent that's really true, but language is the one thing that's in common, all of us have, and what brought us here today, and it's a tough thing to write clearly, to communicate clearly, and there's a whole lot to be said, a whole lot of tips and tricks. I just wanted to leave you with one today, and that is look for be verbs, and you will be empowered, I promise. And I do also want to let you know, what was that? Ooh, it will, yes.
That's a future tense B word.
I like it. These are my plants down here. So I would also like to invite you all to visit my website. I have a book coming out in a couple of weeks that includes all kinds of my favorite tips on how to write powerfully, including concise writing and engaging writing, and I hope the book will also be engaging for anyone who picks it up. And I don't know, you may have heard of Christina Halverson. She's one of the people that's been kind enough to endorse it for me. And we even have people fighting over it, so, you know. And I happen to have a few advanced reading copies today, and I have cards I would be happy to give to anyone. So I'll hang out for a while. If you're not starving and would like to chat, I'll be here. So, thank you.
All right, so who has a question for Marcia?
So I know kind of Daniel's talk earlier talked a little bit about being kind of engaging and whatnot, and it seems that you run a risk if you're trying to be incredibly concise of like removing personality and kind of removing like it feeling like there was a human that wrote it and it wasn't just like, oh, look at these amazingly concise words, you know? Is there a kind of a tip or a trick to just making sure you can keep some personality in the writing, but also keep it concise?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's important that your writing be engaging and that have a voice and it sound like a human wrote it, and that it ideally is a little bit entertaining. And so what I'm talking about is not stripping out the stuff that makes it sound engaging. It's just stripping out what's unnecessary and getting in the way. But letting your voice come through, your chances of people actually reading it are so much better. So definitely.
Another question? Upstairs? Back there? Okay, here I come.
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to respond because I think that is like the not being robot thing very works, but I think that the fewer D verbs you have to replace them with stronger verbs, and the more stronger you use, the more voicey you are. Like,
Absolutely.
you get much more engaging writing the minute that you have to use better verbs.
That is a good add-on to the answer to this question. When you're using bloated language and redundant words and be verbs, chances are that you're kind of partly asleep. And so when you look at those things, it's going to wake you up as well. You're going to say, oh, yeah, if I use this active verb, that's how I would talk. That's, I could say, the presentation was good. Or I could say, there's your is verb. Or I could say, that presentation rocked. And there's your active verb. And that's how people talk, and they're going to hear you. So yes, you're getting your active verbs in there, thinking about how you would speak, and thinking about the people you're writing for. If you were talking to them across the table, what verbs would you use? And that's what you want to go for.
Hey, so just a really quick plug. Hey, I'm back here.
Where are you?
On the
Yay,
first one.
okay,
Hey,
there we are.
So just a huge plug for Howie Becker's Writing for Social Scientists. It is like a book that changed my writing to be like this. He talks about just going sentence by sentence, word by word, striking out everything you don't need. And also that being concise means not using jargon. Like if you have to use more words to make up that jargon word, that's better than just using the jargon. Which is a huge thing in tutorials and making tutorials readable. I also had a question about kind of how to do that upfront writing, knowing that it's not very good, and then finding the time to come back later once you've finished your product, especially for us, like kind of more open source people who are doing everything at once. Like,
I find that giving up sleep has worked really well for me. Yeah, I wish I had an answer to that one. Good writing takes time. There is no shortcut. The better a writer you are, the more time you spend. The best writers don't have any secrets for doing it any faster. So, but to your first question about just getting it out there knowing it's not very good, just accept it. It's not going to be good when it comes out. And that's partly, I think, why people get bottled up about their writing, because they want it to come out good and they're afraid. And fear is your enemy when you're writing. So just let stuff come out of your brain. Let it flow out of your fingers just the way it is in your head. And don't worry at all. The best writers write crap the first time around. And just embrace that reality and then come back to it. Just be sure that you come back to it. A lot, like many times.
Any more questions? Nope. Okay. Thanks a lot, Marcia.
Thank you all. Mhm.